Hello AP Biology students, we're going to go over the 12th section in Unit 2. And in this section, we're going to go over something called signal transduction. Remember that we're in the part of Unit 2 where we're talking about cell communication. And how cells communicate specifically is called signal transduction. There's a couple key vocabulary words we have to know before really jumping into different types of cell communication. First is the ligand. This is going to be a chemical molecule of some sort that is going to be like the messenger of the cell. These ligands are typically going to be secreted by a sending cell, and it's going to be taken up by a target cell. Now, the part of the cell that actually interacts with this ligand is known as a receptor, and these are membrane proteins. We also have internal messengers that are known as secondary messengers, and they relay this message further on into the cell. Something important to remember about signal transduction is not every cell will have these receptors for specific responses. This is why cell communication exists. You want to target certain cells for a response, however, other cells without that receptor aren't going to have that same response. There are going to be three specific stages within signal transduction. The first is going to be reception. This is going to be when the signaling molecule, the ligand, is going to bind to the receptor protein of the cell. And typically, this ligand's interaction with the receptor will change their receptor shape in some way. Remember, in biology and in science and in life, whenever you change the shape of something, you change the function. That concept of shape determining function is very important for all of biology, but specifically cell communication. Stage 2 of the signal transduction pathway is known as transduction. And this is where the reception is carried through a relay of secondary messengers into the cell. Typically, again, each one of these steps will either change the shape of the protein or activate in some way where it's going to further on the signal into the cell. Now, this part of the signal transduction pathway can look very different when comparing different types of cell communication. There can be tons of different proteins involved, different ways that things are activated, deactivated. But again, this is just a relay of information of the message from the cell membrane to some response the cell is going to have. And the last stage here is obviously the response, where the cell is going to respond in some way. That could be a lot of different things. That could be like making a protein, that could be making more energy for the cell, entering mitosis, going through apoptosis. There's a lot of different ways that the cell can respond. And each response is specific to that type of cell and to the signaling molecule that it's interacting with. I think that this diagram does a pretty good job of showing this signal transduction pathway. In our first box, there's no ligand, so this pathway isn't activated. When there is a ligand, it's going to bond with the receptor, activating it. The receptor is then going to activate a secondary messenger, which activates another secondary messenger, which activates another secondary messenger, and then it creates an internal response within the cell. And like always, we have to end with a meme. I think this one's great. Ligand molecule, cell without a signaling receptor. Yeah, it's not getting in.